Matt.
There we go.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me say that most of you will remember last Sunday we were scheduled, so I thought, to host Rabbi Lynn Gottlieb, and I, kind of lost. I didn't know what had happened, and we did connect a few days early this week. And she replied, she said, I lost track. I was organizing a pilgrimage with over 2,000 people. Plus, weekly, she's speaking at churches and mosques and rallies. Um, and so it just, it got away from her, but I can't help but to think it's probably also my fault to some extent, because as some of you know, a lot of my emails weren't being received. And even though she knew she was scheduled, I typically send out a reminder just ahead of time. Anyway, we are going to have Lynn in the month of May. And, in interacting with a few of you, we were impressed with especially her being on the spot like that, Barb Parmet, last Sunday, and we're going to have Barb back in a few weeks as well. We are in constant conversation over developments in Gaza and throughout the Middle East. So now a little bit of a pivot here. I have invited 5 of us to give us 2 or 3 minutes. This is kind of an unusual phenomenon, and I was in a conversation with Tanya earlier this week. She's not here today. It's her mother-in-law's 94th birthday, and she's hosting 64 people at her house. So I've never been to her house, but I hope it's pretty big. Anyway, Tanya and I were talking about how we're doing church was on none of our dance cards, certainly not on mine, but we chose to dance anyway. And so here we are in various locations around the country, which makes it a little bit interesting to try to come together physically as we did 2 weeks ago and as we will at the end of the month. Because we understand that people who are very precious to us, who are a part of us, can't be there physically. But we are here in this unusual arrangement. And I would say that one of the primary purposes is that we are witnesses. We are witnesses. We together, we are witnessing the world. We are witnessing reality. We witness the voices of one another and all of the people who come on, like a Rabbi Lynn Gottlieb and so many more that we hear from. We witness music. Some of this music that we witness together, we can find ourselves independent of one another, just maybe going on YouTube or some other app. But the fact that we're doing it together, hopefully curating it in such a way that it gives strength to the time that we have together. And we witness our conversations, we witness our lives in breakout groups. And I love when I hear stories of generosity, about how one person or one household is helping in some way, sometimes even materially and financially, helping somebody else among us, certainly morally. And it's just a beautiful thing. So I want to thank you for being generous people. And in our generosity, I know that we as a community are among the priorities of many of you. So I've invited 5 of us, and They are Kathleen, Dr. Dave, Diane Fox, Caroline, and Sally. And if Kathleen is so moved, I've asked her to go first, and if she is so inclined, some of our exchanges, especially for those who've been a part of our Wednesday night Zooms, Kathleen lives in Eastern Washington in a region that is sometimes stressful for some people. It would be stressful. She manages it in such a wonderful, loving way, living living in MAGA country, intense MAGA country. Um, she just continues to love her family and the people that are there. And so we're gonna hear from folks, why they are contributors to us. And so let's start out with you, Kathleen. So you can go ahead and unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I appreciate Pastors Diane and David so much. They just mean so much to me. Our whole group means a great deal to me. Pastor David just mentioned what it's like living up here. And without this group, I really wouldn't have a place where I could share my own thoughts and feelings comfortably. And I also love that this group is so inclusive. There's nobody left out. I don't love it. And I could probably go on for a long time, but every person in this group means a lot to me. And I definitely want to support and want to continue supporting this group financially because I just think it's such a beautiful place. That's what I have to share.
Okay. That you said it. So thank you. Thank you for being you. Yes, and we hope we'll keep hearing more and more from you. We have Dr. Dave in the house. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. It's I think it's a beautiful morning here. My wife Leslie prays for rain constantly, and so this is one of those days where her prayers are answered. So just a little bit about my history with New Covenant. I moved to Santa Barbara. I'm in my 14th year here. I came out from Boston, where I'd lived for the previous 31 years with a wife who was dying of cancer. She was from Southern California, and she wanted to come home to die. She was not really a person of any religious faith, but she thought that I should find a church. She encouraged me to find a church here. And so providentially, I'm a physician, and Dr. David Moore, Pastor Moore, happened to come into my office, and we struck a bond immediately. He was seeing me for an injury. He had slipped on the ice. And I said, ice? What ice? In Santa Barbara. He said, no, it was in St. Stephen, New Brunswick. I said, get out of town. St. Stephen's, New Brunswick? I said, we are undoubtedly the only two people in Santa Barbara who have heard of St. Stephen's, New Brunswick, let alone we'd both been to St. Stephen's, New Brunswick. He teaches there, and I'd passed through it several times on the way to visit friends who lived in the Canadian Maritime provinces. So we hit it off right away, and so I came to New Covenant, and I've been coming ever since. And I know I'm preaching to the choir when I say this is a very special group. One of the things that struck me right away was that Christianity began in the setting of small groups of followers just like ours, and I think it's precious and invaluable, and therefore I want to support it. Also, I believe that the saying that it is in giving that we receive, I actually literally believe that. I literally believe that if we give to something beautiful, uh, it gives back to us. And certainly, the beloved community is a very beautiful thing. I make a weekly contribution through Givelify, and I thought I was being very generous. And we had a couple who were really the heart and soul of our congregation, Emily and I always say the aptly named Sonny Urzua. He is a very sunny personality, a terrific person. And Emily got up, and they had 5 kids. And Emily got up one Sunday to talk about giving, and she talked about how it wasn't easy with 5 kids to make ends meet, and but she said that when she did uh, somehow find a way to make contributions to New Covenant, she said she found herself over and over again coming up with more money. It just happened. One of life's little miracles, and I truly believe that. So she inspired me, and even though I thought I was making generous weekly contributions, I increased my contribution substantially because of Emily's words that morning. And it's never been a burden. In fact, year after year, uh, I, it somehow I seem to just do well financially, better every year until this past year, which is not in no ways an anomaly. I just in my old age, I've started to work a wee bit less, but I do believe that. I think that what we give comes back to us in many ways. And so that's my message. It is in giving that we receive.
Thank you for that. And thanks for being a friend, David.
Thank you.
Diane Fox. Are you muted? Yeah, I think you're
Yeah,
muted.
there I
Yeah.
am.
All right.
I am. Yeah, when you asked me to speak, I agreed, and then I listened to what everybody else had said on, I think it was Palm Sunday, and I hear what people say now. I really don't have anything else to add, but I love this community. I love the sense of solidarity, the sense of union of spirit and justice that comes together. The people, all the people here, everybody with their separate gifts. People have talked about it being family. I feel like that. I love the participatory nature of our times together. And I'm so grateful for, as everyone has said, for the shepherding of Diane and David, of both of you. And several of you have honored the traditions you come from, the families that you come from, the families of giving. I never knew my grandparents. They were gone before I was alive, but I know from story. I have one grandfather who lost the family store because he was in coal mining country in a small town and gave credit to people who could not give credit back. who could not pay him back. But what do? Do you leave your neighbors to go hungry, or do you do what you can? Another grandfather was a circuit riding Methodist minister in Kansas, and his children remember that he would give the shirt off his back to anybody, and they resented that, actually. They would have liked a few shirts themselves, but anyway. But for this group, it's really the solidarity, the joint bringing together of spirit and action and justice. And thank you. So.
Thank you, Diane. I feel like Diane is just like this secret weapon that we have among us. Caroline.
Hi. Well, I would second what everybody else has said. The community is very, very meaningful for me. I often kind of look at what I donate as sort of what I might otherwise spend on therapy. Don't go to a therapist. I probably should. But this is my therapy budget right here. And the other thing I was sort of thinking on when David asked me to speak is this is really hard work. I mean, David and Diane make it look easy, but this is hard work. You know, you're hosting 30 people every Sunday, keeping a group going, you know, entertaining us, enlightening us, creating unity, creating bonds. It's hard work. It's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual labor. And as a freelance writer myself, I deeply believe that you have to compensate people for their work. I mean, I don't know if that's like an appropriate way to say it, but that's how I think. And I, you know, when David speaks, it feels like these beautiful words kind of just drift down from heaven and land on his shoulders, but I know it's actually really hard work. And that's part of why I give, just to recognize and honor that, and show respect for that. And I wish I could give more. I just right now a little constrained, but I give what I can, and I give it out of love and respect and honor for the hard work that David and Diane do to hold us all together and inspire us and uplift us and give us everything that they do. So I think that's my 2 cents, as it were.
Wow, thank you for acknowledging that and you know, recognizing it, Caroline. We have Sally.
Yay.
Sally's a veteran among us. I mean, like decades.
I haven't been paying attention to my emails because I've been still recovering from those horrible antibiotics I was on for so long. So when I saw them sharing, I'm like, what am I sharing today? But I just jotted down a few notes and kind of like, well, why I'm here with this church. Well, because God put me here. Because when I was searching, and it's been 38 years, when I was searching for some place, somebody just happened to invite me that used to come to this church. She invited me to come, and I made a bargain with God. A lot of you know the story where I said I wanted my question answered. And if he didn't answer this question that day, I was going off and having a nice wild old time. It had nothing to do with church, because I'd had it with the Catholic Church and all this church that I'd been in all these years. And he showed up, he answered the question, so I couldn't deny that he was present in this church. And over the years, I've seen growth. I have grown, pastor has grown, our church has evolved and changed and gone through so many different iterations. It's been wonderful to see. And I love where we're going, because we've always marched to the beat of a different drum. We've never been church, even when we were very much wrapped up in Church of God in Christ. We were still the outliers. We were still different. because we'd show up for conventions and people could always see where New Covenant was, because we looked like the cosmopolitan area, where the rest of the church was predominantly Black. And that was just the beginning of our changing and growing. And I mean, the love and support that I get from everyone, especially Diane and new pastor. I mean, even when I mess up and do stuff, you don't beat me up too badly, but but you guys are so sweet, and I know that I can call and ask for anything. And I know the pastor prays for all of us, that Diane has a heart for all of us. And I've seen, because of my position with them behind the scenes, some of the pain and stuff that they have gone through on our behalf. And I mean, you just know that God is here. God is in the midst of all of this as we change and as the times change. As you know, when I first started there was no such thing as LGBTQ and all of that. We didn't know what the heck that was. But here we are embracing all of God's children, and I love it. And God has a sense of humor. He shows up all the time. I mean, remember the first time we talked about it being really inclusive, and somebody came to church with a dog, very cute dog. You know, so it's just everything as we're going together. I'm excited about where we're going and what God's doing, using us to do, and moving with the times as things change and as our world, you know, gets more challenging and people are suffering mentally, emotionally, financially. That I come here and you get, you know, healing words, encouraging words, and things to help us move forward through the maze of all of the stuff that's going on around us, which seems very overwhelming a lot of the time. So this is home, so here I am.
Thank you, Sally Y. Let me say this. As Sally just mentioned, we've gone through, there have been lots of versions of us, I guess you might say. And there was a time when there were quite a few more people who were part of our congregation. So we had paid staff, and Sally was part-time. We had a couple of full-time, 2 or 3 people, but Sally has done our books for years. And even when the revenue was not strong, she volunteered and has for a number of years, and does a lot of stuff behind the scenes.
Never paid.
And yeah, and you know, she's doing stuff that she used to get paid for, and we're just, you know, pausing to say thank you. Can everybody say thank you to Sally, please? Yeah.
Very well.
Thank you.
We can do a better.
Thank
Let's
you,
do it.
Sally.
Yeah, there you
Thank
go.
you, Sally.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you,
Sally.
Sally.
We love
Thank you, Sally.
So, and Sally has a few announcements, and I'm going to talk about what I was going to talk about in order to conserve time today. When she's done with these announcements, in the interest of time, I will share what I was going to share.
Okay, it is Sunday, April 14th, and today's theme is we're all just walking each other home, which is a wonderful theme. I don't know exactly how Pastor's going to talk about it, but it brings to mind, I remember me walking my friends home after we done play. They walked me home, and then I walked them back, and we walked back and forth, and finally decided to split in the middle and go our ways. But it was definitely a very fond memory of when I was really small. And on Monday, there was that showing of the film, and Barbara Pomerantz says Jewish Voice for Peace is grateful for everyone who participated on Monday. 50 people showed up for the screening of Israelism, and she appreciated that very much. Now, next Sunday, April 28th, we're going to be there in person. We're going to have a little bit of a potluck. So anyone who wants to volunteer to bring some snacks or something so that we can say a wonderful farewell to our dear Caroline. She's moving to New York in May. So let's give her a nice send off, and everybody who can make it, be there. She can bring something, do. If not, it's okay. We always have plenty to share. We're looking forward to seeing each other in person then. And on Wednesdays on Zoom, I haven't been able to make it as often as I like, but when you do, it's a wonderful conversation. So those who are not making an effort to get it, you're missing out. So I just encourage everyone who can to join us at 7 on Wednesday. And we'll be having communion, so feel free to grab whatever you have available. And we will be doing communion after the service. Today's quote is from Barbara A. Holmes. It says, "How shall we address nihilism, debilitating health issues, and political regressions that threaten the community? Since the intensity of these afflictions has not been assuaged by our high-tech diversions or church as usual, I'm suggesting a turn inward to face the inner conflicts and seeping psychic wounds that can no longer be ignored. I'm also suggesting a turn towards the community, towards openness, intersectionality, and intercultural cooperation and solidarity. These public and private turns will improve our chances of bringing the beloved community into being." Amen to that. Take it away, Pastor.
Thank you so much, Sally Y. The things that inspired this theme today, we're all just walking each other home, include, number one, they include, for example, I have, not as much as I have in previous years, but I've been present on social media, posting things that for many people seem to be very controversial. But occasionally I will get a private message from someone who will thank me for saying what I'm saying, but they don't feel comfortable approving what I say publicly. In other words, they're not comfortable liking the post. And I've heard from a couple of Jewish friends actually who feel like it might be beyond their capacity to handle their current reality if people knew how they really thought. I recognize that there are people who are in different places in terms of their ideology, or at least the origins of their ideology. But their conscience is awakening to things that they had not considered. And I need to make sure that I am doing all that I can to leave space for other people's transformation as much as I do for my own. I'll say that again. I need to make sure that I am giving space for other people's transformation. And I see Diane, you raised your hand. So what are you thinking, Diane? Or was that intentional?
And no, that wasn't intentional. I was trying to just put the thumbs up and I didn't know how to do it. I
Okay.
love that. I love that statement. Yes, amen.
Well, thank you. We don't amen enough around here, I think. So that was perfect. So, part of what inspires this conversation also is over a month ago, a U.S. airman by the name of Aaron Bushnell stood in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., and set himself aflame. And he had a statement, but as he burned, he announced, free Palestine. And it made me think of, and I don't directly address this often, but it made me think of my doctoral studies, my dissertation, and I know this is a mouthful, but I'm going to give you the title to my dissertation. Some of you've heard it before. How the process of doctrinal standardization during the later Roman Empire relates to Christian triumphalism. I know that's a mouthful, and that's why I don't talk about it a lot. But in antiquity, in the early centuries, the church became, there was a reordering and a marriage to empire. And so the church and for many people, the expression of church became something different from its intent and its origins. But before that period, the church was not a religious category so much as it was an awakening of conscience. That's really what the gospel was. So that you didn't have to leave behind your particular culture, nationality. It was awakening of conscience so that wherever you were on whatever trajectory, whatever chart, wherever you were, you could become someone new. You could be who you were meant to be, but you could not traverse necessarily all of the terrain. You could not cross cover all the distance to become everything that you wanted to be, but you could be who you wanted to be in that space. And Aaron Bushnell reminded me of how in the early days, there were in the Roman Empire, in the military, there were people in the military who heard the message of Jesus, and it awakened their conscience. And they decided that they didn't want to kill anybody. In the case of Aaron Bushnell, he was specifying the people of Gaza, that they are his brothers, they are my sisters, they are my family. I cannot support this enterprise that my own government is involved in. Well, in the Roman Empire, there were men who decided that they weren't going to kill. And preemptively, there were emperors, I'm thinking specifically of the Emperor Domitian, but not only, who would preemptively execute people they found out had a relationship with Jesus. Even if there were no military conflict, if they were not involved actively in some campaign, if they just found out that this person had an encounter with Jesus that made them not eligible anymore to be a part of not just the military, but they were killed. They were a liability. Their pacifism was a liability. We live in a world where people are in different places. And one person to another person might look like they're living in a state of compromise, that they're not doing all that they should be doing, all that they can be doing. But I really don't always know where you started. I don't know your starting place. I don't know what you had to get through to be where you are. But I do know that there are people of decency, people of clear conscience, who do things differently from myself, who have different conversations. But I do also know that we are walking each other home. We started in different places, and we may be miles apart, but we're walking each other home. We're trying to get there. We tend to have quite a bit of agreement, ideological agreement among those of us who are here in this space. I want to encourage us to appreciate the fact that there are a lot of people who, at first blush, might not seem like they're with us. In fact, one of the things I'm trying to get better at is understanding that people even have different vocabularies. They say things, they use words that could annoy me, trigger me, but those words are words that their language, if you will. They're words that I am not comfortable with. But that I'm not comfortable with doesn't mean that they're not legitimate expressions. It's just that my relationship with those words, my relationship with that language, I find I find them confining. I find them I find them harmful. I listen to the words that a person may use, and I feel like they could do serious damage with those words, but at the same time, they may be using those words in ways that are different from the way that I conceptualize them. And so that was what these are the things that inspired me to even raise this, to resurface this quote by Ram Dass, that we're all walking each other home, and we need to make sure, I want to make sure I'm not being too harsh, that my expectations I don't want them to be misplaced. I want to lower the drawbridge of compassion, and I want to receive more people, in my experience, that might seem like they're cut off, shut off. I think it's very possible. I think it's extremely conceivable that other people are looking at me the same way, and they're struggling to give access to David Moore, when in fact, we're all just walking each other home. I can appreciate that they don't feel safe around me and safe with the language that I've used. And still we may have unnecessary allowing something to keep us separated unnecessarily. Yeah. So I'm gonna stop there, and let's talk about it.
Oh boy, there's so much that I want to comment on that. I was taking a lot of notes. Thank you so much, Pastor David. I do want to just jump in very quickly because I loved hearing from all of the panel about like, why are they here? And I just want to add a little bit of like why I'm here. Obviously I didn't start coming until the pandemic is when I started coming, and it was a very difficult time, right, for all of us. And I really was searching for like a spiritual guidance, and there were no spiritual guides, it seemed like at the time, but I really found in Pastor David and Pastor Diane, just like this and all of the community, just like this enveloping like umbrella of love and compassion. And just like there's that last phrase that you said about that, that we don't want to allow something that is going to keep us, how did you say that? Like we don't want to allow something that's going to keep us separated from one another. And so I feel like, as time's gone on, I feel like the love of God is so much bigger and broader than I ever knew before. And that's something I see in this community, just this very broad understanding of God's incredible love for everybody, individuals from different cultures and the world, the animals, creation, and just a desire for what did you say, Diane? You said it was like a union of spirit and action and justice. So I liked that, what you said, Diane. But I just feel like, Pastor David, like one of the things that you keep bringing to us is like almost like even what you're saying now to me is like defining loving one another. I just feel like you're trying to take down these barriers and just giving us more ways to like lower our drawbridge and teach us how we can love one another and not be threatened. And I felt like Barb did that last week also, like she didn't demonize the other, she just was advocating for love and mercy without demonizing those who were infringing on that. So I just want to thank you for that. And that's why I love being here, is because I feel like everyone here is wanting that as well. And you just like each of you, like Caroline, you bring some very specific political insight that I don't ever usually know about how can we love one another. And so thank you so much for awakening our conscience and bringing us, I think, to the real gospel. So that's just my emotional response right now. So I'd love to hear from you, Shella, from others, like what are you thinking and feeling?
I absolutely love that you just said the real gospel. And I think over the years of just growing up in church, and that term wild church, I want to know more about that. But anyway, growing up in church, I feel like it was more of an indoctrination, just being, how groupthink happens. And we all have to be this way and act and perform in this way. I can't, it becomes a part of you, so you don't even understand that person or that system or whatever is not giving you room to be who you are, or to grow in any way, to expand the like the term you said, giving space for others, for other people's transformation, as well as my own transformation. There's not that room to do that, because you feel like if you violate this or that part of your indoctrination, that you can be kicked out, or that you can be looked at differently. And I don't think it's intentional all the time. I really believe it's people thinking that they're going in the right direction, that they're trying to be worthy of being loved by God and loved by other people and all that. But in the process, someone calling God Allah they're made to feel different. Terms and words that make people feel. And so this is a part of what David, I've just watched you just change over the years, and I am so privileged, if I use that word, to be a part of, to be a part of a space that is helping me to change it. It's not easy, and I don't know how. It's just not easy. I'm just gonna be real. It's like I'm like, wait a minute, what about this and what about that? You know, what's gonna happen to me because it's so different. But I appreciate my heart opening up to things that I didn't quite know about, even politically, even though I'm not really political, but opening up to that and being able to have a broken heart for things that I see happening in Palestine, just a broken heart, because how can you not see it in my view? How can you not see that never again has to be for everyone? So there's just that, and what a awesome way you present things to us and allow us to grow and to change. And I really appreciate it because you make us feel worthy. You might not understand it, but we're starting to begin to feel worthy. At least, okay, I'll say I'm starting to begin to feel more worthy of who I am. So I know people have something to say. So just open that up to.
I got a little something.
Yay.
Yeah, Pastor, as I appreciate your talk. It's challenging me. It's hard to be somebody unabashedly on the side of justice, human rights, and all the advocacy and everything. And not so it's a challenge to do that and to see that everybody's on their path home, because then we have to bend towards mercy. We have to bend towards humility and justice, and it's everyone. It's not just those that walk, talk, and act like me, or us, or whatever category we're trying to fit in. And I was sitting with your message, and it made me think of the Rumi quote. The student shows up when the teacher shows up when the student is ready. And I started thinking about that quote, and I'm like, how does that apply to this situation? And I think I'd phrase it this way: home shows up when the walker is ready. And there's those that are in self-destructive paths that maybe we can see in society or in our lives, that maybe you're like, they're not really, are they on a path? Like, are they going home? Like, what are they doing? And that could be true. Maybe they're not on their path home. Maybe they're on a path towards but they're on a path of something that felt like home to them growing up. Like, home is very different to everybody, but there is a true home of love, I would say. And then maybe that's the home we're speaking of. And so I guess I would say home shows up when the walker is ready, if I were to take that Rumi inspiration there and your inspiration from your talk. So thank you.
Yeah, I was actually, Matt saying that reminded me of a conversation we had just the other night. I was actually having this conversation with some of my girlfriends and I was telling Matt about it we're talking about just generationally too, having conversations with our parents. My girlfriends and I were talking about how we have conversations with our mothers and just having different experiences of what it's like to have for us as we grow up to be adults entering different phases of relationships. Some of my friends are forming their own families, and there's a lot of work that I think people in, at least my friends and I, have done for ourselves, but sometimes that brings up difficult relationships, conversations with, the people who raised us, even though we appreciate and respect how they did. But I think it's we're all talking about kind of the different spaces in which our parents have been ready to have those conversations, or we've been ready to have those conversations, and how to approach them, and even how to keep that relationship open and loving, even if one party is not ready to have those kinds of conversations. So like Matt was saying, like, that home may appear when the person is ready, and how do you keep walking with somebody that you love, whether they're a family member or somebody you don't know on the internet, but especially how do you walk with those people who are important in your life, even if they're not quite ready to have the conversations about things you may see differently. So Matt's summation of that, what it means for home people to be ready for home, reminded me of that recent conversation I was having with my friends.
Sarah, I think that's so beautiful because I'm privy to a conversation that happens right here in my home where these two very mature, very beautiful, intelligent women who think very differently are helping each other. Well, I'm talking about Louise. She's able to share the side of her growing up. She's 84, 85, and she's been able to share this with her friend who grew up quite differently. And her friend is being challenged to learn. And it's not, those conversations can be so hard. And she just doesn't understand sometimes the challenges of Louise growing up in America, being Black, and all of these things. And so I think it's beautiful because one time, because she's just telling her truth, she's telling the truth. And one time the lady said, I certainly hope this won't cause our friendship to suffer. And Louise says, absolutely not. And so I love those kinds of things because this is a thing that will go on until they both leave here. I just believe that, and I see the changes already in her friends being able to understand a little bit of how difficult it is, or just changing, and the relationship is good.
Sometimes just sharing your truth, it's not necessarily about asking the other person to change their experience or to even fix it for you. Even like we were talking about, like mother to daughter relation, conversations. Most of us are talking more about having conversations where you just feel like you can share experience. And even like one of my friends was mentioning that she was able to finally have that conversation with her mother to be able to say, like, I'm not, like, not to guilt her into something that she did wrong as a mother, but just to let her know, like, I'm still kind of healing from this and I'm on my own path. I'm doing this, I'm doing the work, I'm going to therapy, but just to be able to like share that with the person who was so influential in that needing to have that healing, but then for the mother to be able to respond like, I never meant for you to have to heal from that. I'm sorry you have to heal from that, but like, I'm glad that you are, kind of just like, yeah, it's not about fixing it or even necessarily seeing things the same way, but just being able to like feel like that person is there with you on a journey of healing, between friends even.
Yeah, sometimes people don't know what they don't know until someone says something and it helps them. They're like, oh, I never would have ever thought that. So it's beautiful.
So, yeah.
Oh, Kathleen, are you raising your hand? You're muted right now still.
Okay, now can you hear me? Okay. I love the talk this morning. It's so encouraging to me. Up here, I almost never run into anybody except my Lebanese brother-in-law who thinks similarly to me. And it is so important to keep the mindset that God loves every single person up here, whether they're mega people or conspiracy theorists or whatever. I don't agree with them, and I'm not afraid to say what I think. And occasionally someone will say, oh, I didn't know that. Like if I talk about what's happening in Gaza, and people will say, well, we're Israel's allies, and we're supposed to support them or whatever. And then, I could say, well, are we supposed to be having 33 plus people, civilians killed, and how many children? Okay, so I'm not afraid to say what I believe, but at the same time, I don't want to stop loving anybody because I think God loves them. And I think, I know He does. And I think, like when David said, putting down the drawbridge of compassion and making space. Most people don't change if they're being kind of pushed at. They dig their heels in. Or at least that's my experience. And if you can love them and not change who I am, but love them, I believe that's a way of making space. And the way he talked about that just triggered so many thoughts in my mind of how I could do better with that. I am so thankful. Thank you so much, Pastor David, for this talk. Means a lot.
Yeah, I'm figuring this out. I'm learning. Yeah. I'm just going to keep trying to figure it out myself.
Well, that's one of the reason I love this community, because it's like iron sharpens iron, right? I feel like we're walking together, we're figuring out together, and we're listening to these other voices like, oh my gosh, I never knew that before. I never heard that voice before. So now I'm going to bring that into my truth and my reality. And, you know, so I appreciate that. And I appreciate your humility as well.
We're all just walking each other home. All right. Well, Kenichi's going to lead us in communion. Thank you, everybody, for your contribution. And even if you were silent, you being present is a big thing for us.
Kenichi, before you start, may I just say one thing very quickly? Years ago, when my brother had a stroke, I was very new to this community, and Pastor David, you called me almost every day just to say, how are things going? And Constina, so many of you donated to help. I just want to know, it's been a few years, but he is in such a good place now. I mean, he's still disabled, but he's inside, he's full of life again. He's seeing new purpose. He started painting. So I just want to say thank you. I mean, it takes years, but thank you so much for your love and prayers. He felt them. And anyway, thank you. Wanted to tell you, I just talked to him this week.
And that started during the pandemic when we were all finding new lives, different lives. Yeah.
Yes.
And so he found it, his path to finding it was a little different, I guess you could say.
Yes. Thank you, Kenichi. Go ahead.
No, thank you. Wow. I'm actually glad, very much appreciative, you know, that we are having this conversation, because many times I have internally wrestled with, okay, how about this situation? How about for this person or that person? And particularly when we really don't know the person's starting point, like you said, Pastor David, we don't know their starting point. And just recently, if I may just say this, I was sharing with Sayuri about many of our white students at Fuller's MFT program, the way they seem to react or to expect our, we have one Black faculty person, and many of them seem to approach her as if she's always angry, like, oh, I didn't know, I didn't want to offend you, or, you know, the angry Black woman kind of stereotype. And so I mentioned this to her, and I said, honey, you know that it seems like many of our white students have, maybe they never had a Black person as a friend. And then she goes, well, at least now they have a starting point to begin to understand. And at first I was like, you know, come on, this is Southern California. I mean, you know, they had, you know, they make choices and they came ignorant, and all these thoughts started to flood in. But then I thought, yeah, you know, relevant to this message today, I don't know what their starting points are. And and I can't impose my judgment on them, nor would I want anybody to impose their judgment on me because I slipped something that out of my ignorance or said something that might seem offensive. So I think this is a starting point for all of us. I mean, I know for me to consistently seek to wrestle with these matters and to really, I think this is a message of embracing the love and the heart of God, the love that is moving the entire universe, creation, all of humanity. I think Margie, I think you said it was so big, so deep, so mysterious. Even Paul wrote that in Ephesians, that we are called to embrace that. And I think of communion as we come to the table, of just that, even in the midst of his closest followers abandoning him, and even after, the supper that he took with them, and presented the symbols of his broken body and his shed blood. Even then, most of them forsook him, and so let's embrace, and I encourage each one of us to, of course, we open our hearts to the divine energy and the movement, the mystery, to embrace compassion, patience. It's hard. It's very difficult. It really is, especially personality like me. But I'm having to learn this in the academic setting, where so many of my colleagues and even the faculty members defer. And so I'm with you all, and in solidarity. And so as we come to the Lord's table, and as we partake the symbols of his broken body and of his shed blood, may we embrace anew our commitment to the divine compassion, divine love, and to stand out of that in solidarity with all of humanity. So let's come to the table now. This is the Lord's body broken for us. Let's take. And this is the Lord's blood that has been shed for us. Let's partake.